Hi everyone. So today we had the first Python tutorial, and there were some people who couldn't make it and asked me to record the session. We didn't record it during the session, but that's why I thought, let me just make a video now in which we go through what we did during the tutorial today. I will share presentation now. I hope you can all see the screen. Then bekijken, that is Dutch for viewing. Ja, voorstellen. All right. So this course is intended to provide an introduction to Python for people who have no programming experience or who have some programming experience but are not so familiar or experienced with Python yet. To introduce myself a little bit, I did a bachelor in physics and astronomy, which I finished in 2022. There, I did an internship connected to CERN. On the right here, you see a picture of one of the large particle detectors. I think it's very interesting. CERN, for those who don't know it, is a research center in Geneva, Switzerland, for subatomic physics. And what I did in my internship was investigate a specific type of computer chip that is um, used to measure molecules that come into existence during, not molecules, subatomic particles that come into existence during collisions of particles at near light speed velocity. I also love music. I've studied classical piano for a bit, and right now I'm doing a master in bioinformatics and systems biology at the Free University of Amsterdam. I did an internship in Toulouse, the south of France, in oncology, and now I'm doing a second internship also in oncology and bioinformatics at Liege. And I'm investigating homeostasis disruption during acromelanoma onset. During today's session, we did a short introduction round. I think there were a couple of people who couldn't make it today. So next week, we can introduce ourselves again a bit. So why would we want to use Python? Because it does take some time and effort to learn a new programming language. So it makes sense. It's a good thing, I think, to think about why you want to learn a certain language. Maybe there are better options for certain purposes. In general, however, Python is a good option for many people because, well, it's the most popular programming language in the world right now. So a lot of companies use it. It's used a lot in scientific research as well, and it's useful for a wide variety of applications. You can do pretty much you can do anything with it that you can do with any other programming language. It has also a very simple syntax, so it's well readable and it's a bit easier to get into than some other programming languages. For biologists specifically, it is very suitable because it's also one of the most or the most popular language for data analysis. It has some very useful packages for data visualization, and it's also very suitable for machine learning tasks. Python first appeared in 1991. Um, it has some very useful tools for visualizing data, just like R. And this is why in biology and bioinformatics, R and Python are the two go-to languages. And Python has a focus on code readability. So if you see a section of code, you can read it, well, not quite like English, but it has like a very readable structure and syntax. So, as an essential central thing in any programming language are variables. A variable is a named memory location that stores values. So on top of the slide, you see an example of this. Variable name is value. In this case, on the left, we see variable underscore name. That is the named location, the variable. And on the right side of the equality sign, which is used to assign a variable, we see a value. So this value is then stored under variable name. It's important to remember that variables are case sensitive, so there's a distinction between a variable with a capital letter or with a lowercase letter. And if you pull a variable with a lowercase letter, but you made it with a capital letter, it's not going to be recognized and it will result in an error. Variables must start with a letter or an underscore. So if you start with a number, it doesn't work. And they can be assigned different data types. There are many different data types, but four of the most basic, most used ones are these. An integer is a whole number rounded off. So, for example, 7 without dot, without numbers behind the comma. A float is a number that can contain many numbers behind the dot. So 6.52, for example. Then we also have strings, which are used to store text, and you use parentheses. So if you define a variable, assign it a string value, then you open parentheses, type, for example, this is a string, and close the parentheses. Like I said, Python it has a very simple syntax. In many programming languages, you actually have to define which data type uh, it is, which data type you want every time that you define a new variable. With Python, we don't have to do that. It just recognizes because of the parentheses that it is a string, and it will store it as a string. In the case of 6.52, you're using a number and a dot, so it will recognize it as a float and it will be stored as a float. With 7 only, it will be recognized as an integer. And in some cases, you can do different operations with integers and floats, so this distinction can be important. And finally, there are lists. We use squared brackets to make lists, and we separate elements in the list with commas. So item, comma, item 1, comma, item 2, comma, item 3 makes a list of 3 different items, and these items can be any type of variable. So they can be integers, they can be floats, or strings. Generally, you want to use, you cannot mix them together. So to give an example, we see my list and we use the square brackets and commas. So we have 3 different elements, 12, 14, and 16. During the class, I asked, well, what is going to be printed with this statement? The answer is 28, because my list 0 takes the first element. Computer languages start counting at 0 generally. And my list 2 provides you with the final element, which is 16. Then it adds these together and prints the sum, resulting in 28. This slide gives an overview of some basic operations. This will be convenient for the first practice, the first exercise in the exercise sheet. You can just look over this, also Google operations. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Uh, it is important, however, to note that there is a difference between division, integer division, and the modulo. Normal division, if you divide 7 by 5, you get 1.4. With integer division, you round it off, so you get 1. The modulo gives you the rest. So 7 divided by 5, what remains of this? So in this case, it's 2, the remainder. And with 2 stars, you get the power. So if we want 5 squares, we do 5 star star 5, and we get 25. So I recommend you do the first exercise of the exercise sheet and then watch the next final bit of this presentation. So the second part is about loops and conditional statements. If you want to repeat something many times, we can use for loops in Python. And in the example here, you see for I in range 5. So what does this mean? Well, I is going to be a variable, which is going to be assigned what comes after. So range is a standard function in Python that gives you all numbers in a range. It starts at 0 and it ends at 4 in this case, because it's up to 5, but not including 5. So if you do this for I in range 5, it will start at 0 up to 4. And in this case, it will print each iteration. So the number I is going to be changed, but this is loop iteration, that part of text, that string, will be printed every time the same way. And that's why a for loop is useful, because you just have 2 lines of code, but it's going to print 5 different lines. And once you want to do more complicated things, this becomes really important, of course. Then there's one important thing, that there's a difference between using a single equality sign and a double equality sign. If we assign a variable, we use a single equality sign, but if we want to compare two things, we use 2 equality signs. So to assign my variable to 10, we use a single one. If we then use an if statement and only want to print true, if my variable is 10, we use if my variable double equality sign equals 10. We use 2 dots and a column, and then on the next line indented, we get print true. So in this case, if you run this as a script, the result will be the word true, because you're printing a string true. Finally, there are conditional statements, and these allow you to only do something in a certain case. So you have a section of code and you only execute it in the case that something is true. So in this example, we say age is 20. This is variable assignment. And then we say if age is bigger or equal than 18. So in this case, we are not using equality, but bigger or equal than, which has this kind of notation. The column again, the double dots, and then print you are an adult. And then afterwards, if this is not the case, in this case, this is not the case because the person in question is 20 years, then you can use an else statement. And in this case, anyone who is not 18 or older is a minor. So we can just say else without condition and print you are a minor. I also made another example with the Dutch flag, which contains 3 colors, red, white, and blue. This is very inefficient code. It's just to show the advantage. Like if you want to do this, you would write it differently. But in this case, we define a list and then we define a variable. My color is green. And then we check if my color is equal to the first element of this list. If that is the case, we print true. Well, in this case, that is not going to be the case. Green is not the same as red. So we go to the next section of the code. If an if statement isn't valid, in this case, the equality doesn't hold, so the true is not going to be printed. I forgot the print statement here, but true will not be printed. So you go to the next line of code, which is else if, notated as elif. With Elif, you can have multiple options. So in this case, the options are not binary. The Dutch flag uh, doesn't have two options like adult or minor, but it has multiple colors. So we use Elif my color, and then we go for colors of Dutch flag, the second element, um, which is white. And green is again not white, so we move on to Elif my color is the third element, which is blue. Again, green is not blue, so we go to the else statement. And if it's not none of these three colors, uh, the statement is going to be false. Green is not in the set of colors of the Dutch flag. So in the end, we will print false. I think the best way to learn is just practicing code. So practicing programming, practicing with the exercises. So I made this exercise sheet. It's a notebook where you can execute individual cells. It There are two different notebooks. One is called Q1, and that contains the exercises without answers. There's also a Q1 solutions, which contains the exercises with answers. Earlier, I um, uploaded Q1 that already contained the answers. I've now deleted that file, and the current Q1 on the Google Drive contains no exercises, so that's good to practice with. The solutions are already available in Q1 Solutions. So if you run into trouble, you can have a look there. You can also ask on the Discord. I can help you, and other people in the class can help you too. So please ask any questions. Let us know if you're stuck with someone, and we can all help each other. I hope that you will enjoy this course, and I hope to see you or in person next week. Thank you.